Jayora. I'm not sure that. Jayurata Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayurata Gopichana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopichana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Rachachana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rachachana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rachachana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rachachana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jayurata Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, enough singing for today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4. Chapter 24, text 72. Idam aha purashmakam Bhagavan Vishvakshripati Brigvadinam Atmajanam Shishrikshu Samishishrikshastam.
Shishrikshu Samsishishatam.
Okay. Idam aha purashasmakam.
Idam aha purashasmakam.
Bhagavan Vishvakshrikpati.
Bhagavan Vishvakshrikpati.
Brigvadinam Atmajanam.
Brigvadinam Atmajanam.
Shishrikshu Samsishrikshasatma.
Shishrikshu Samsishrikshasatma. Idam maha purasmakam. Idam maha purasmakam. Bhagavan Vishvasrikpati. Bhagavan Vishvasrikpati. Brigvadinam Atmajanam. Brigvadinam Atmajanam. Sisrikshu Samsisrikshatam. Sisrikshu Samsisrikshatam. Idam maha purasmakam.
Idam maha purasmakam.
Bhagavan Vishvasrikpati.
Bhagavan Vishvasrikpati.
Brigvadinam Atmajanam.
Brigvadinam Atmajanam.
Sisrikshu Samsisrikshatam.
Shishrikshu Samsisrikshatam. Vaishnavis. Idam maha purasmakam. Bhagavan Vishvasrikpati. Brigvadinam Atmajanam. Shishrikshu Samsisrikshatam. Idam. This aha said Pura formally asmakam unto us. Bhagavan, the Lord, Vishvashrik, the creators of the universe, but the Master, and Bhrigu Adinam, of the great sages headed by Bhrigu. Atma Jananam, of his sons. Shishrikshu, desirous of creation. Samishirikshastam, who are in charge of creation. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. This prayer was first spoken to us by Lord Brahma, the master of all creators. The creators headed by Bhrigu were instructed in these prayers because they want to create. Purport. Lord Brahma was created by Lord Vishnu. Then Lord Brahma created Lord Shiva and other great sages headed by Bhrigu Muni. These great sages including Bhrigu, Marichi, Atreya, Vashishta and others. All these great sages were in charge of creating population. Since there were not very many living entities in the beginning, Vishnu entrusted Brahma with the business of creation, and Brahma in his turn created many hundreds and thousands of demigods and great sages to continue with the creation. At the same time, Lord Brahma cautioned all his sons and disciples by reciting the prayers now recited by Lord Shiva. The material creation means material engagement, but material engagement can be counteracted if we always remember our relationship with the Lord, as that relationship is described in these prayers recited by Lord Shiva. In this way, we can remain constantly in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, despite our engagement in the creation, we cannot be deviated from the path of Krishna consciousness. The Krishna conscious movement is especially meant for this purpose. In this material world, everyone is engaged in some particular occupational duty, which is described in the Varnashram Dharma. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, and everyone are engaged in their occupational duty. But if one remembers his first duty, keeping in constant contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything will be successful. If one simply executes the roles and regulations of the Varnashram Dharma in the role of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya or Sudra, and keeps busy and does not remember one's eternal relationship with the Lord, one's business and activities as well as occupational duties will simply be a waste of time. This is confirmed in first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.8-28. Dharma shvanushtita pungsham vishvakshena katashuya nutpada yatiratim shrama eva kevalam. The conclusion is that even if one is busy executing his occupational duty, his business in Krishna consciousness need not be hampered. He has simply to execute the devotional service of Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing, chanting and remembering, and need not abandon his occupational duty, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 18:46. Yatha pravritrir bautanam yena sarvam idam tatam svakarmana tam abhyarchya siddham vidhati manava. By worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all-pervading, man can, in the performance of his own duty, attain perfection. Thus one cannot continue with his occupational duty, but if he worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as Lord Shiva herein prescribes, he attains his perfection of life. Svanushtitashya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam. 1-13. We should continue executing our occupational duties, but if we try to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by our duties, then our lives will be perfected. Om Jnanatimirandasya Vinanjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Namo Vistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vanchakalpa Drupyascha Kripa Sindhugivacha Paditanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This prayer was first spoken to us by Lord Brahma. The Master of Creators, the creators headed by Bhrigu, were instructed in these prayers because they wanted to create. Hare Krishna. So, Lord Shiva is speaking and explaining the prayers, the Rudra Gita, and here it says that these prayers were recited by Brahma and the other creators. And Prabhupada gives a very interesting purport and makes one of these statements that the Krishna conscious movement was especially meant for this purpose. There's many purports you find where Prabhupada makes a certain statement and then he says, that's why we established this content. So from there actually we could make a list with different reasons why Prabhupada established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. For example, if we go into the Sri Upadeshamrita, Nectar of Instruction, the 4th shloka, Prabhupada, the 6 loving exchanges, Prabhupada says in the purport, in order to facilitate these 6 loving exchanges, therefore we have established the International Society of Krishna Consciousness. That's why it's said if we read Prabhupada's books, we can understand Prabhupada's mood and mission. It's important too, especially Prabhupada's purports, the Bhaktivedanta purports. They give us an understanding of what is Prabhupada's heart, what is dear and important to him. So here Prabhupada makes a point that for this purpose the Hare Krishna movement was established. So what was the purpose? Someone remembers? To not become entangled in the material thing. Yeah. And to always stay in touch with the Lord. Because how you're not becoming entangled? By always staying in touch with the Lord. whatever you do, because we do have so many different duties, we all have our duties, but whatever we do, we should always stay in touch with Krishna. And when we stay in touch with Krishna, then our duties become perfect. And if we just do our duties without being connected with Krishna, then they all become Shrava Eva Ikevalam. Well, waste of time. Any questions? I mean, in essence, that's what is said here. Now we can say little more, but that's basically the essence of Prabhupada's purport and today's class. Okay, what else? I mean, yeah, there's nothing else. That's the topic. But we have everyone has his duties, and we know the word dharma, which is used. Dharma, which can be translated as religion, but also as that inherent quality of nature. We know, Prabhupada give the example of the fire, heat, and light. It's the nature of fire, the dharma. So dharma describes the nature of something that cannot be changed, or that, I mean, the original, yeah. But there's different kind of dharma. So there is the varnashram dharma, for example. There is the manushya dharma. There is the swadharma, the sanatan dharma. There might be others, street dharma. So many different dharmas. And in the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, of course, we have mainly the story of Prahlad Nishinga, which takes most of the canto. But then towards the end, what is described towards the end of the 7th canto? Varnashram Dharma. In great detail, actually, quite several chapters they deal with Varnashram Dharma. And there is one famous shloka also there. This is 7.11, 8 to 12. Yes, exactly. Let's read them. And that, because we speak of, okay, there's Varnashram Dharma, which means, we know what it means. There's a different Varna and different ashrams. And if you're situated in the Grihastha ashram, then your duty and dharma is different than from the one who is situated in the sannyas ashram. It's just a different lifestyle. And for example, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Shri Bhaktiyaloka, Bhaktiyaloka basically, these are 12 essays that Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote on the 2nd and the 3rd shloka on the Upadeshamrita, and then it was put together as a book. And then almost for all the shlokas he gives instructions for the householders and instruction for the renunciates. He discriminates. So this means for the householder like that, and for the sannyasi it means that. Because it's a different lifestyle. So not everything is the same. And then of course then we have the Varna also. Yesterday we had the television, and Deen Dayal said, yes, I'm representing the warrior, the dharma of the warriors, warrior monk. And he took his sword, and so they were quite surprised. So there is different nature. Like if someone has a kshatriya nature, then he will his needs, his desires, his occupation, his motivation, his activity will be different from a person who is a more Brahminical nature. And therefore, naturally, one should be situated in the different varna, different ashram. But then there is the Manushya Dharma, and Manushya Dharma means just basic qualities that everyone should develop, regardless of you're a Shudra or Brahmana or whatever. Everyone should develop these qualities. Manushya means human, and like, if you want to be a human being, then you should follow these qualities. And if you don't follow the qualities, according to scriptures, you're not actually considered to be a human being. Although you may have a human body, but from your consciousness, you're not actually human. Okay, so what are these? These are the general principles to be followed by all human beings. truthfulness, mercy, austerity, bathing twice a day, tolerance, discrimination between right and wrong, control of the mind, control of the senses, non-violence, celibacy, charity, reading of scriptures, simplicity, satisfaction, rendering service to saintly persons, gradually taking leave of unnecessary engagements, observing the futility of the unnecessary activities of human society, remaining silent and grave, and avoiding unnecessary talk, considering whether one is the body or the soul, distributing food equally to all living entities, both men and animals, seeing every soul, especially in human form, as a part of the Supreme Lord, hearing about the activities and instruction given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the shelter of the saintly person. Chanting about these activities and instructions, always remembering these activities and instruction, trying to render service, performing worship, offering obeisances, becoming a servant, becoming a friend, and surrendering one's whole self. O King Yudhisthira, these 30 qualifications must be acquired in the human form of life. Simply by acquiring these qualifications, one can satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, 30 qualities. And you can see, I mean, if you look in today's society, there's plenty of qualities that hardly anyone follows, right? So that's the Manushya Dharma that one should develop. And yeah, then of course there is the, I mean, there's a specific term also which is called Svadharma, which means the one's own personal nature. And of course that personal nature is, in some way, when we speak of Varnashram, it's included there also. But Varnashram Dharma, it refers more to society, in the sense of how I should behave in society, how, you know, where I'm situated in society, how I'm situated in society. That's Varnashram. And then Svadharma is more my personal life mission, we can say. You know, at the end of the day, everyone is completely individual. You know, we have a individual fingerprint. It's completely, nobody has the same. And we are a product of our past activities and desires. So we are completely individual, and we bring all, you know, from our past lives, certain good qualities, certain talents that we should engage in the Lord's service, and some bad qualities that we should overcome, and some life lessons that we need to learn. And that's completely individual. And to understand that, that's called Sadharma. And one should be very eager to understand one's own nature and try to apply it. Of course, in Vedic culture, as soon as someone is born, what do? They do a birth chart, right? Like Jyotish, astrology. Like here in the West, astrology is like maybe for entertainment in the newspaper at best, or it's seen as some esoteric kind of hocus pocus. But in Vedic culture, it's taken very seriously. It's Veda. It's a Vedic science. It's part of the, you know, it's said as Jyotish is like the eye to see the world. You know, it's very accepted as scientific. So when a child is born, they make a birth chart, and so parents know who came here, what kind of soul took birth in the family. And according to the nature, then the child is also brought up and educated. Okay, and then of course, in the Bhagavad Gita also we find a lot about these topics of Dharma. It's interesting, this is here from Keshav Maharaj. He makes a point that there is the Svadharma and there is the Sanatana Dharma. And in Gita we find some important shlokas that are repeated twice. And one of these shlokas refers to the Svadharma, and one of the shlokas refers to the Sanatana Dharma. It says here, This is from 335. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faulty, than another's duties perfectly. And then in 1847 it's again said, it's better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. So the same statement is made twice, so we can understand it's important. And in which other shloka is quoted twice? Engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me and worship me. And that's 934 and then again in 1865. So, and that's the topic of the shloka, Prabhupada's purport, that yes, we should engage in our occupational duties according to our varnashram, our swadharma. But then we should also combine that with our eternal Sanatana Dharma. In other words, our activities should be dedicated to the Lord. And if you're not doing that, then Shrave Eva hi Kelvelam, then it's a waste of time. And Prabhupada often gave the example of the, you may have many zeros, but if there is, if you put a 1 in front, then it becomes meaningful. If you take the 1 away, you just have zeros. So someone may be very nicely engaged in his duty according to Varnashram or his Swadharma, but if he's not adding Krishna, then what's the use? And someone may say, this is an extreme statement, the person is successful, the person is happy, why it's useless? Well, from the absolute point of view, when he dies and has to take birth again, if he has not developed that relationship with Krishna, then he just has to start again and hasn't gained anything. Whereas if one adds Krishna into his life, then everything becomes meaningful, and by just performing one's own duty for the pleasure of the Lord, to please the Lord, one can attain a perfection. And that's also again and again confirmed in Shastra. There's a nice purport also, or shloka in the Bhagavatam, that my spiritual master often quoted. As you know, my spiritual master was a scientist. I mean, he was a very saintly person. He grew up in Vaishnava culture and was a very pure-hearted soul. But he also had a scientific mind, and he went to Los Angeles. He did a PhD in chemistry. So then, and Prabhupada told him that he should preach to the scientists. So he often quoted this text. This is Bhagavatam 1:5-22, and it says here, the text says, learned circles have positively concluded that the infallible purpose of the advancement of knowledge, namely austerity, study of the Vedas, sacrifice, chanting of hymns, and charity, culminates in the transcendental description of the Lord, who is defined in choice poetry. So, knowledge and austerity and sacrifice, all like the perfection of all of that is when it describes the glories of the Lord. And then Prabhupada gives an interesting purport. I will choose it, part of it, it's a bit long. Prabhupada says, human intellect is developed for advancement of learning in art, science, philosophy, physics, chemistry, psychology, economics, politics, etc. By culture of such knowledge, the human society can attain perfection of life. This perfection of life culminates in the realization of the Supreme Being, Vishnu. The Shruti therefore directs that those who are actually advanced in learning should aspire for the service of Lord Vishnu. So in human society we find all these things, psychology, physics, philosophy, politics, all these different, section of knowledge and science, or but they should all be engaged in the Lord's service. And those who are actually intelligent and learn it, they should aspire for the service of Vishnu. Then later Prabhupada says in the same purport, when advancement of knowledge is applied in the service of the Lord, the whole process becomes absolute. The personality of Godhead and his transcendental name, fame, glory, etc. are all non-different from him. Therefore, all the sages and devotees of the Lord have recommended that the subject matter of art, science, philosophy, physics, chemistry, psychology, and all other branches of knowledge should be wholly and solely applied in the service of the Lord. Art, literature, poetry, painting, etc. may be used in glorifying the Lord. The fiction writers, poets, and celebrated literatures are generally engaged in writing of sensuous subjects. But if they turn towards the service of the Lord, they can describe the transcendental pastime of the Lord. Valmiki was a great poet, and similarly Vyasadeva is a great writer, and both of them have absolutely engaged themselves in delineating the transcendental activities of the Lord, and by doing so have become immortal. Similarly, science and philosophy also should be applied in the service of the Lord. There is no use presenting dry speculative theories for sense gratification. Philosophy and science should be engaged to establish the glory of the Lord. Advanced people are eager to understand the absolute truth through the medium of science, and therefore a great scientist should endeavor to prove the existence of the Lord on a scientific basis. Similarly, philosophical speculation should be utilized to establish the supreme truth as sentiment and all-powerful. Similarly, all other branches of knowledge should always be engaged in the service of the Lord. A beautiful purport, and you can see quite a different thinking. Like usually science is used to prove that there is no God, and all the scientific progress and all the machines that are developed through science are meant for sense gratification, to increase sense gratification, right? All the comforts that the modern society has brought up, it's just meant to give pleasure to the body and the senses. So Prabhupada says it should be the opposite. Science should be engaged to actually prove the existence of God. Yes, okay, it's understandable that you want to, you're curious, how does the universe work, how does it function, we want to understand it. That's quite natural. But then do so so that you can come to the conclusion there must be a supreme consciousness behind everything. There must be a supreme master. Use science to prove that God exists. And then of course all other science, Prabhupada specifically speaks about writing and art, like if someone is very artistic, painting and poetry, writing, that can all be engaged in glorifying the Lord. And then whatever talents we have, whatever qualities we have, then they become perfect, and we can become immortal like Vyasadeva and Valmiki by their glorification of Krishna. Okay, these were my thoughts on this topic. Any comments, questions?
We heard that when we just follow our duties, occupational duties, but we don't connecting to the Supreme, then everything is a waste of time. And what is the result if we don't follow our duty and we just
try to connect with the Lord.
But we don't look for our family or look for material things also, and don't do something for the society. I just remember this purport where Prabhupada said better to be a honest street sweeper than to be a false meditator.
Mm-hmm.
Can you maybe shed some light on this?
Okay, that's a nice point. Yeah, so you turn it around. So basically we said that if you do the duty, yeah, my thinking is not working properly. Okay, let's try to. So your point was that if we just focus on trying to please Krishna but not doing our duty, right?
Just
Yeah.
Going to India, please.
Yeah, the question is how long can we do that? No, that's why that's why Vedic culture gives the different kind of dharmas. I mean, yeah, of course, Prabhupada emphasized both. The main focus certainly is on the Sanatana Dharma, on our eternal relationship with Krishna that we should reawaken. But yeah, Prabhupada certainly also emphasized that we should be engaged in our other occupational duties. That's just I would say it's like a package. It just goes together. It's maybe someone else likes to comment. Yes, please.
I think this question was asked by Krishna Maharaj. He was here. Like, how do we go about our following our nature?
Yeah, I remember.
Remember, yeah?
Yeah.
And he gave very good answer.
Please enlighten us. What did Maharaj say? I forgot.
If I remember correctly, he said there should be balance.
Well,
What a brilliant answer.
Just what I said.
Yes. Although in the class you mentioned how, from spiritual absolute perspective, there's no benefit of executing your material occupation and duties if you don't please Krishna by that, or even following your dharma, your natural qualities. And if it doesn't please Krishna, there's no spiritual benefit.
Yeah.
So, is it that it's better to kind of neglect your dharmic needs and just do whatever service?
I think it's better, yeah. It's better than to just be a karmi and to be not connected with Krishna. It's better. But even better than that is to actually understand your dharma, follow your dharma
For Krishna.
and for Krishna. That's even better. So I think we should discriminate between these stages, Of course, some people they don't follow the dharma and they don't follow Krishna, so that's the lowest. That's below Manusya dharma, that they don't do anything. Then there are some people that at least follow their dharma, or they at least follow some ethics and moral. That's already good, nice. But if it's not connected with Krishna, then it's still useless in a sense that they don't make progress.
Even though they may feel very satisfied.
Yeah, they feel very satisfied. They contribute something valuable to society. People glorify them as great personalities, but still, it's not. And that's sometimes it's difficult for people to understand. It seems like this Hare Krishna philosophy is very harsh or very fanatical. It's a waste of time, useless. But it's like I used to use that example of a bird's eye perspective. Like it's like if you look from the point of eternity, like if you see that we are an eternal soul and we're in a cycle of birth and death for millions of lifetimes, and each time we enter a stage and we play our roles and then we die and we have to start again. From that point of view,
it's not fanatical.
It doesn't change anything. Like one life you're successful, and the next life you're a pauper in the streets, and the next life you're pious, the next life you're sinful. So what's the point, And that's what we're doing. That was the soul going through all this different. So only when we connect with Krishna and develop our relation with Krishna, then something changes, because then we get a chance to actually get out of that cycle of birth and death. So and therefore, even if someone is, maybe not so well established in his own dharma, but at least he connects with Krishna, then that's better than one who is nicely situated in the world. But then, even better than that is to actually do both, to be properly situated in your worldly duties, your like Swadharma, Manushya Dharma, and Varnashram, and at the same time you're also nicely established in Sanatana Dharma. And that's perfection. And that's what Prabhupada stresses, that what Prabhupada says here. And that's what we also should strive for, to come to that platform. Okay, thank you. I think now we somehow brought it all into the picture. Thank you. Yes.
It's a kind of question that comes up often. Gauranga Prabhu always asks, so why, Krishna is stressing Dharma so much in the Gita and then says Sarva Dharma Parityaja? So how do we deal with that?
Seems to be contradictory.
Yeah, like all the time he speaks about Arjuna, you have to do your duty. And then, okay, you fight for me, that's the highest duty. So give up all other duties and just surrender. So how do we kind of bring that together? Maybe also in this perspective of...
Yeah. Good question, yeah. Well, okay, two things. The first is, although Krishna said to Arjuna, give up all your other duty, all the dharma, and just surrender unto me. But what does it mean? Did Arjuna then just sat on a chariot and meditated on Krishna and chanted Hare Krishna? Or did he actually took his bow and arrow and started to kill the soldiers? No, he did. So he engaged in his dharma, in his varnashram as a kshatriya, and his swadharma as being a warrior, and it's his duty. So although Krishna said, give up all the dharma and just surrender unto me, Arjuna actually started to fight. He followed because Krishna wanted him to fight. If Krishna would have wanted him to go to the forest, then he would have went to the forest. But Krishna wanted him to fight. And then in the course of following Krishna's instruction, he also engaged his dharma, in his occupation in the Lord's service. So that's one possible way to answer. And another way to answer is that, Krishna wants to make a point. That we have spoken about all these different dharmas, and they're important. But there's something more important. And sometimes people can't, if you say it's important, then why is it you put it aside afterwards, But again, it's like different stages, different levels. So it is important, and human society should follow it. But then at the end of the day, even more important is to, consider what is pleasing to Krishna, and then do that.
It's kind of interesting, basically. So Gita is the ABC, we say. So it's the basic philosophy, but then this Sarva Dharma is like the highest stage, what the gopis do, and like they just give up everything and just surrender. So it's interesting that everything is there also, only in the Gita in one sense.
Yeah, and then as we know, then Prabhupada explained then where the Gita ends and Bhagavatam starts.
On the lower levels,
Jai Jagannath. Jai Jagannath.
we know the highest is Sarva Dharma Parityaja, but on the lower levels, it is necessary to follow Dharma because it leads you to that highest Sarva Dharma Parityaja. Down the road, it gives you ability by following this your duties. It's because it's purifying.
Yeah, sometimes you may jump over a few steps if you have the adhikar to do so.
Or mercy.
Mercy, yeah. I mean, like usually we say that there's the ashrams, and you go through the ashrams. Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyasa. So everyone is meant to do that. But then sometimes we see someone is Brahmacharya and then it just jumps from Brahmacharya to Sannyasa. I mean, hopefully he's not just jumping. But if he has the adhikar, then he can also just take to that. And basically that's the mood of Sarvadharma Parityajam. in the sense of just dedicating fully. But then, yeah, if in principle, it's maybe better to take the steps in between, to go through that purification and be properly situated.
Basically, we have two options: the regular or a fast lane.
Yeah.
Both are bona fide.
Both are bona fide, both are good. And as before, often it might be better to take a slower and humble position than jump prematurely in somewhere where you're not don't have the Audi car for. Yeah, that's the other thing. And if you still do it, you really have to surrender and pray for mercy.
Is that an option, a bona fide option?
Huh?
Like just surrender and then just pray, and it's like
Yeah,
it's a risk.
It's a risk. Yeah, it's a risk. But it's a bona fide option if you have the proper mood and motivation, desire. Okay, thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai.